Welcome back to the Mad Genius Thesis,
Yeah.
where we kind of unpack, this fascinating and often complex link between creativity and mental illness.
Yeah, we explore those minds that just seem to operate on a different wavelength. Those whose creative brilliance is often intertwined with personal struggles.
And today, we're going deep into the life of a rock icon who I think embodies this paradox maybe more than anyone else,
Oh, yeah.
Jim Morrison.
The Lizard King himself.
Yeah.
A figure who just continues to fascinate and mystify even decades after his death.
Yeah, and I'm already intrigued. I think our listeners go to be too, especially when they hear this.
Okay.
So imagine young Jim Morrison, just a kid on a road trip with his family.
Right.
And they come across this horrific scene, like a car accident, with dead Native Americans scattered on the highway.
Oh, wow. That's, a traumatic experience for anyone, let alone a child.
Absolutely. And here's where it gets interesting.
Okay.
Years later, Morrison claimed that he felt the souls of those Native Americans jump into his brain during that moment.
Whoa, that's a powerful image. And it really speaks to the kind of profound experiences that can shape a person's worldview, especially at a young age.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder about the impact of early trauma on a developing mind,
For sure.
and whether it could have played a role in Morrison's later struggles and his artistic expression.
It's a question that psychologists and researchers have been grappling with for a long time, and it's definitely something to keep in mind as we kind of explore Morrison's life.
Okay, so let's start the beginning.
Right,
Jim Morrison was born into this strict military family.
right.
His father was a naval officer, often away on duty.
Yeah,
How much do we know about his childhood
yeah.
and what kind of impact it might have had on him?
Well, his childhood was marked by frequent moves because of his father's career, which can be really disruptive and unsettling for a child.
Yeah.
There are accounts of a strained relationship with his parents, particularly with his father, which some psychologists believe could lead to feelings of instability and a need to rebel, like yearning to establish one's own identity.
So that classic struggle between conformity and individuality. Do
Exactly.
you think that's something that we see emerging early on in Morrison's life?
Definitely. There's a story about him as a teenager where he'd take comic books, cut out the panels, and rearrange them into, shall we say, rather risque scenarios.
Wait, what? Like with superheroes?
Think more along the lines of Donald Duck and Daisy Duck.
Really?
Yeah, he even added his own dialogue, injecting his own dark humor into it.
Wow.
It was a harmless prank, sure, but you can see that subversive boundary-pushing streak starting to kind of emerge.
That's a great anecdote, and it definitely challenges this image of him as just a brooding poet.
Yeah.
It's fascinating to think about the ways in which creativity can manifest itself in these unexpected ways.
Absolutely, and this idea of challenging norms is key to understanding Morrison.
Right.
This wasn't just some troubled kid acting out. He was exceptionally bright, graduating high school a year early, and excelling academically. And this brings up a crucial aspect of the mad genius idea.
Okay.
While we often associate creativity with rebellion, it's vital to recognize that many creative individuals are highly intelligent and capable of conforming.
It's almost like they understand the rules so well that they can break them in a more impactful way.
Right.
Like it's a choice they're making, not a lack of ability to follow the norms.
Precisely. They see the world differently and aren't afraid to challenge the status quo.
Okay.
And this duality intelligence combined with rebellion is a recurring theme throughout Morrison's life.
It makes you wonder what might have been different if he'd channeled that energy in other directions.
Perhaps, but then we might not have the Jim Morrison we know and still discuss today.
Right, right.
So as he transitioned into adulthood, Morrison delved deeper into various forms of art.
Okay.
He attended several colleges, finally ending up at UCLA to study film. It's during this period that he starts writing poetry, exploring filmmaking, and immersing himself in the vibrant beatnik coffee house scene in Los Angeles.
Oh, yeah.
This is where his artistic voice truly starts to blossom.
This is such a pivotal time for him, right?
Yeah.
He's finding his tribe, he's experimenting, and he's honing his craft.
Absolutely.
It's like all these diverse influences are converging and shaping his perspective.
Precisely. And then, of course, there's the fateful encounter that changed everything.
Oh, yeah.
Meeting Ray Manzarek on Venice Beach.
This is the origin story of the Doors, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
Legend has it that Morrison recited some of his poetry to Manzarek, who, as a keyboardist, was immediately blown away by Morrison's raw talent and charisma.
Right.
He saw the potential for something truly unique.
It's like a scene from a movie this chance meeting
Yeah.
that sparked this musical revolution.
Yeah.
It's amazing how these seemingly random moments can shape the course of history.
I know, it's crazy.
So what happened next?
Well, they recruited guitarist Robbie Krieger and drummer John Densmore
Yeah.
and began rehearsing in a small beach house.
Okay.
Their fusion of rock, blues, and jazz, combined with Morrison's dark, poetic lyrics, created a sound that was both captivating and groundbreaking.
So they had the musical talent, the songwriting,
Right?
and then there's Morrison's stage presence.
Yeah, he was magnetic and unpredictable, pushing boundaries and captivating audiences.
He was often described as shamanistic, a mystic, leading the audience on a journey into the depths of the human psyche.
Yeah.
How did he cultivate that image?
It was a combination of natural charisma and a carefully constructed persona.
Oh.
The Lizard King, as he called himself, was inspired by his interest in reptiles and primal forces, channeling this raw energy and connecting with the audience on a primal level.
It makes you wonder, though, how much of that persona was a shield, a way to protect himself from the vulnerability of revealing his true self.
It's a common theme we see with creative individuals, this creation of a persona as a way to manage the intense emotions and pressures of being in the spotlight.
And for Morrison, that persona became increasingly important as the Doors skyrocketed to fame.
Yeah.
Their music became a sensation, their concerts legendary,
Right.
and Morrison a bona fide rock icon.
But fame, as we know, can be a double-edged sword.
For sure.
And as we'll see, Morrison's personal struggles intensified alongside his success.
And that's where the Mad Genius question really comes into play.
Right.
Was there a connection between Morrison's artistic genius and his demons? Was his creativity fueled by his pain and darkness?
It's a question that has been debated for decades, and it's one we'll continue to explore as we delve deeper into Morrison's life and legacy.
Okay, sounds good.
All right.
So we were just discussing how fame can be this double-edged sword, and it seems like Jim Morrison's story really kind of highlights that struggle.
It's almost as if the intensity of his creative output was matched by the intensity of his inner turmoil.
Yeah, let's talk about that dark side of creativity.
Okay.
One of the big questions surrounding Morrison is the role of substance abuse in his art.
Yeah.
There's this kind of romantic idea that his use of alcohol and drugs somehow fueled his creative genius.
It's a dangerous myth to romanticize addiction.
Right.
While some artists may use substances to cope with the pressures of their creative process,
Sure.
it's crucial to remember that addiction is a disease with potentially devastating consequences.
And we see those consequences play out in Morrison's life.
Yeah.
There are countless stories of his erratic behavior both on and off stage.
Oh, yeah.
Showing up late to concerts, forgetting lyrics,
Right.
alienating those around him.
His substance abuse wasn't just affecting his performances,
Right.
it was damaging his relationships with his bandmates, friends, family.
Right.
There's a psychological theory that some individuals have a lower tolerance for emotional distress, leading them to seek relief through substances or risky behaviors.
Okay.
Perhaps Morrison fit this profile.
It's like he was constantly trying to numb the pain, the intensity of his own emotions.
And it's worth noting that this intensity is reflected in his music.
Yeah.
The raw emotional power of his lyrics is undeniable.
Right.
But it's also evident in his self-sabotaging behavior, his inability to maintain healthy relationships, and his struggles with addiction.
It's a tragic paradox, this incredible creative force battling these internal demons.
Precisely. And as the Doors' fame reached its peak, we see this internal conflict reflected in their music as well.
Oh, okay.
Their third album, Waiting for the Sun, takes on a darker, more introspective tone compared to their earlier work.
For example, the song The Unknown Soldier is a powerful anti-war anthem filled with raw emotion, a far cry from the more psychedelic, celebratory vibe of their first two albums.
Yeah, exactly. You can hear and feel the shift in their music.
For sure.
And while Morrison continued to cultivate his Lizard King persona, embracing this image of the rebellious rock god,
Yeah.
it seems he was privately wrestling with some very real and very human struggles.
Struggles that would eventually spill over into his public life in a very dramatic way.
Right.
In 1969, during a concert in Miami, Morrison was arrested for indecent exposure and public intoxication.
This incident became a major scandal, and it really marked a turning point in Morrison's life and career.
Yeah.
The trial dragged on for months, and the negative publicity took a toll on the Doors. They were banned from performing in several cities, and radio stations stopped playing their music.
Wow.
It seemed like their career was on the verge of collapse.
It's interesting, though, that there's still debate about whether Morrison actually exposed himself that night.
Yeah.
Some witnesses say he did, others say he didn't.
Right.
The whole thing is shrouded in mystery and controversy.
Regardless of what actually happened, the Miami trial highlights the perils of fame and the way public perception can be so easily distorted.
For sure.
The media frenzy surrounding the incident reinforced the image of Morrison as this reckless, out-of-control rock star, even if that image wasn't entirely accurate.
It's like the persona, the myth, took on a life of its own.
Yeah.
And Morrison became trapped by it. He couldn't escape the image that had been created for him, even if he wanted to.
This is a recurring theme we see with artists who cultivate these larger-than-life personas.
Yeah.
The line between the art and the artist can become blurred, and it can be incredibly difficult to separate the two.
But even with the weight of the Miami trial and the negative publicity surrounding him,
Yeah.
Morrison was still creating. He continued to write poetry, work on film projects, and record new music with the Doors.
Right.
In fact, they released their fourth album, The Soft Parade, shortly after the Miami incident.
This album was a bit of a departure for the Doors.
Okay.
It featured more elaborate arrangements, orchestral elements, even some horns.
Oh, wow.
It was a far cry from the raw blues-influenced sound of their earlier work.
Some fans and critics saw it as a sellout, a sign that the Doors were losing their edge.
Right.
Others viewed it as a natural progression, a band experimenting and pushing their creative boundaries.
It's interesting to consider how the context of their lives influences our interpretation of their art.
Right.
Given what Morrison was going through at the time, it's tempting to see The Soft Parade as a reflection of his internal struggles, his attempt to find beauty and meaning amidst the chaos.
What we see in Morrison during this period is this continued search for meaning and self-expression.
Yeah.
That same drive that fueled his creativity early on is still present,
Right.
but it's now intertwined with this sense of disillusionment and weariness.
Yeah.
He's grappling with fame, addiction, legal troubles, all while trying to stay true to his artistic vision.
It's a lot for anyone to handle, and as we'll see, the pressure ultimately took its toll on Morrison.
Yeah.
His search for peace and escape would lead him to Paris,
Right.
but even there, his demons followed him.
So we left off talking about Jim Morrison's move to Paris in 1971, a move that was meant to be a fresh start, a chance to kind of escape the chaos of his life in the States.
It seems like Morrison was seeking refuge, a quieter life where he could focus on his writing and get away from the pressures of fame and the scrutiny of the media.
Yeah, it was a bold move, leaving the Doors at the height of their popularity.
Yeah.
Did he have any specific plans for his time in Paris?
Well, he was definitely interested in exploring his literary side more deeply.
Okay.
You know, he continued to write poetry, and he had aspirations of becoming a novelist.
Wow.
In fact, he had written a screenplay based on the novel The Adept.
Oh, really?
Though it was never produced, it seems he wanted to branch out creatively to express himself in new ways beyond music.
That makes sense. It's like he was trying to redefine himself, to shed the skin of Jim Morrison, the rock star, and embrace a new chapter as Jim Morrison, the writer.
But as we know, escaping one's demons is rarely that simple.
Right.
Morrison's struggles with alcohol abuse followed him to Paris, and his health continued to deteriorate.
Yeah, it's a tragic reminder that sometimes our past follows us no matter how far we run.
Yeah.
What do we know about his final days?
The details are somewhat murky, but we know that on July 3rd, 1971, at the age of 27, Morrison was found dead in the bathtub of his Paris apartment.
Wow, so young.
The official cause of death was heart failure, but the circumstances surrounding his death remain shrouded in mystery and speculation.
I mean, that lack of clarity, the unanswered questions, it almost adds to the mystique surrounding him, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. There were rumors of a drug overdose, foul play, even a staged death.
Oh, wow.
The fact that no autopsy was performed only fueled these conspiracy theories.
Right.
And in a way, Morrison's death became part of his myth, his legend.
Yeah, it's almost as if the mystery of his death became intertwined with the mystery of his life, adding another layer to the enigma that was Jim Morrison.
Precisely, and that legend continues to this day.
Yeah,
Morrison's music and poetry still resonate deeply with audiences around the world.
for sure.
He remains an icon of rebellion, a symbol of youthful angst, and the search for meaning in a world that often feels chaotic and unpredictable.
So after this deep dive into the complexities of Jim Morrison's life and career,
Yeah.
I keep coming back to the central question of our show.
Okay.
Did his undeniable creative brilliance come at a cost?
Right.
Was there a connection between his artistry and his self-destructive behavior?
It's a difficult question, and there's no easy answer.
Right.
What we can say with certainty is that Morrison was a deeply sensitive, intelligent, and creative individual who battled inner demons that ultimately contributed to his tragic end.
His story seems to suggest that creativity can be a double-edged sword. It can be a source of great beauty and inspiration,
Absolutely.
but it can also be a heavy burden, a source of pain and isolation.
And perhaps that's the ultimate tragedy of the mad genius.
Right.
The same qualities that ignite their creative fire can also consume them.
Jim Morrison's life serves as both a cautionary tale and a testament to the enduring power of creative expression.
Yeah.
He reminds us that the pursuit of art and meaning can be a dangerous path, but it's a path that many are still drawn to, seeking to make sense of the world and leave their mark upon it.
His story leaves us with more questions than answers, which is perhaps fitting for someone who embraced mystery and contradiction so fully.
Yeah.
But it also encourages us to delve deeper into his work, to explore his poetry, his music, his films, and to draw our own conclusions about the man behind the myth.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the life and legacy of Jim Morrison.
It was my pleasure.
We hope you'll continue to explore the complexities of Mad Genius Thesis with us as we examine the lives of other brilliant and troubled minds in future episodes.